a new poll in the state of North Carolina by AARP that shows Donald Trump leading over Kamala Harris. Now, it is worth noting that you should take this poll with a grain of salt since it is AARP and they do typically favor Republican candidates, but still, I thought the findings were very, very interesting. So, in North Carolina, it found that Donald Trump, in a multi-candidate matchup where Trump has 48%, Harris has 46%, Stein won, West won, and Oliver won, with 4% undecided. And then in a head-to-head matchup, Donald Trump received 50% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 47% of the vote. Other got 1%, undecided 2%. So this poll that's pretty much it for the presidential race. I also just want to show you briefly the governor's race. 52% for the Democrat Stein, 42% for the Republican Robinson, and after Robinson's scandal, I think this race is pretty much as close to done as any race could potentially be. So with that said, this poll has Trump up 3 and factors into the average in North Carolina, giving Trump a 0.7% lead in the average in North Carolina. North Carolina has been polling very, very close, and it is definitely a toss-up state, a battleground state, but it's a state that Trump was very closely in North Carolina in both 2020 and 2016, holding very narrow leads, and that appears to be happening once again. And just looking at 2020, where Trump led on election day at 0.2% and ended up winning the state by about 1.3. So here, Trump overperformed the polls by about 1.1 percentage points in 2020. If we look at 2016, this is where Trump polled at 1 point, and he outperformed the polls in North Carolina 3.7%. That is about 2.7% more than what he had in the polls. So for some reason, North Carolina seems to be a state that shows a very close race, and it certainly is. I'm not taking that away from it, but it does seem to just miss Trump's percentages in North Carolina by about 1 to 2 percentage points. So what I think North Carolina is right now, I think these polls showing Trump at +3, +2, +4, I think somewhere in that margin is where on election day the polls in North Carolina will end up being. I'm sure Democrats would love to see North Carolina go blue, but for that to happen, I think Kamala Harris would have to have a 2008 Barack Obama type of election victory. And I just think this election is so incredibly close right now that I don't think a 2008 victory is really possible for Kamala Harris at this time. I mean, of course, anything can happen. It's America. Elections can easily change on a whim, so anything is possible. But I really don't think North Carolina, with Trump up 0.7 right now, I think he's probably going to win the state by 2 or 3 points. And that's where I personally see the race right now. So yeah, just really briefly, I'll show you North Carolina. We're back in 2020. Trump won the state by 1.3% over Joe Biden. And back in 2016, he won the state 3.7% over Hillary Clinton. And just briefly giving you a quick look at the state, we see the biggest Democratic vote centers, Cumberland County, Biden won by 16 points. We see Mecklenburg County. And then, of course, all the red states, all the red counties throughout the state. And some suburban counties like Nash are very narrowly for Biden in 2020. Go back to 2016, Trump won Nash. Martin County, 0.43 for Trump in 16, and then got a little bit redder in 2020. So just these are areas just to keep an eye out for in 2024 North Carolina. But in the greater picture of things in the electoral map, Harris and Walz start out, in my view, at about 226, Trump and Vance at 219. The state of North Carolina is 16 electoral votes. If it's +3, that would be in the lean Trump column. That gives Trump a 235 to 226. If the map stayed where it is right now, this is every state that Trump won back in 2020. So unless Trump does worse than he did in 2020, winning North Carolina gets him back to where he was at 2020. And this is where the election really goes from here. This is where if Trump wins the election, he has to pick away states that Joe Biden won in 2020. The difference is he has to pick off some states that Trump himself won in 2016. It's not like, say, Trump running in 2016, where in 2012 Mitt Romney lost some states that Trump had to win. This time, Trump has to win states that he previously won in 2016 when he was on the ballot and lost them in 2020. Now he has to win states that he did win the prior time. And for example, right now, if we look at the polls, we can see that in Arizona and Georgia, Trump currently has a lead in those respective states. So if we assign the states, Georgia and Arizona, to Trump's column, that gets Trump up to 262. that puts him on the doorstep of reaching 270. But as you saw in the polls right now, Nevada has Harris 0.4, Wisconsin 0.7, Michigan 1.8, Pennsylvania 0.6. All three of the states, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, are super close and can easily be won by Trump on election day. Michigan, I think, is a state where Harris has held a very well polling lead there, and I think that state will probably go for Harris by about 2 percentage points on election day. Nevada, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are all super close, and I think if there's any polling miss at all three may very well go for Donald Trump. And if you watch some of my recent videos, you've seen that I think I'm a pretty strong believer that I think there will be a slight polling miss, not as big as 2016 or 2020, but I think by about a point or so, I think the polls will be off. Just because it happened in 16 and 20 with Trump, I don't see why it wouldn't happen again. And there is enough undecided vote for that to happen again. So if that were to happen, then all Trump would need to do would be win a state like Wisconsin, and that would get him to 270. But as I showed you, the polls right now have Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania leading in Harris's column. But all Trump needs to do is flip one of those states, Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania. Nevada wouldn't get him to 270. Wisconsin would, Michigan would, Pennsylvania would. So by winning the state of North Carolina, at very least gets Trump back to his 2020 numbers and gives him a solid foundation of where he can build his electoral prospects from there. I think most likely, next to North Carolina, I think the most likely swing state to go for Trump is Georgia. And then after Georgia, probably Arizona. Arizona is interesting because in 2020, it flipped to Joe Biden, and in 2022, the Democrats did very well in the state of Arizona, winning the governor's race, winning the attorney general's race, winning the Senate race. It looked like Arizona was starting to make that break for the Democratic Party. But Trump has consistently held about a 1 to 2 point lead in the state throughout the 2024 election cycle for both Trump versus Biden and Trump versus Harris. So it's looking like, barring a change, that Arizona will go for Trump on election day, which is certainly a good sign for Trump. That, in conjunction with Georgia and North Carolina, of course the topic of today's video, that puts Trump at 262 and in a good position to win the election. But to do that, he has to pick off one of the 3 Rust Belt states. And as I showed you just to finish the video, Nevada 0.4, Wisconsin 0.7, Pennsylvania 0.6, all of them under 1% of the vote, very, very close, all under the margin of error, and certainly a very winnable election for Trump at this time. Very, very close. And in my personal opinion, the polls are starting to move in Trump's direction. Where Pennsylvania's numbers went up, now they're starting to get a little bit smaller. Wisconsin's are getting smaller. Nevada's are getting a little bit smaller. Michigan's the only one that's really not changing. I think there's a little bit of an underlying push here that we're starting to see where Trump is slowly starting to creep up in the polls. And I think on election day, in my personal prediction, it's going to lead to Trump winning the election. But, of course, that's still over a month away. This video is just about North Carolina. North Carolina going in Trump's column, a good sign for him, and definitely one that helps his prospects in winning the 2024 election. That will do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like. And if you really liked it, please remember to click the subscribe button. And make sure you turn post notifications on so you always get notified when I post a new video. That way you never miss one. Also, please remember to share this video with your friends and family if you really, really, really like the video. And remember to stay tuned because I'll be posting at least one video every single day leading up until election day. So I'd really appreciate it if you keep coming back and watching those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.